Should be cool. All right. Well, welcome to the Parent as Coach workshop. I guess I should turn Motown off. We had a little bit of some the Supremes playing in the background.
Nice.
And so I grew up in the world where my mom loved Diana Ross and the Supremes. So I'm still kind of a little bit of a fan. And this is deciding it doesn't want to go off. So there we go. Well, I'm excited about this subject, and I'm so glad that we are offering this to the parent of VIPs. As we've said all along, we're just proud of the parents that are participating in this, who have decided to come together to energize and motivate and inform each other on best strategies and tools to be able to help our VIPs do well in school and in life. So I'm honored in a small way to be a part of it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Daryl Andrews, Coach D. I'm a workforce development consultant and education consultant, and have been for 20 plus years. And boy, we've been everywhere. I had a conversation with someone recently, said, you know, I remember going to 10 different conferences and you keynoted at all of them. So yeah, so I've been very actively involved because this is my mission. You know, like everyone has kind of a thing that they do. This is my thing, to use my life in a way that's going to make a difference in the lives of many. So I want to share some information with you. We do have a PowerPoint presentation, but it's important to take notes because this information, as with all information, is quite a bit, not a whole lot, because I purposely do it that way, but it's relevant information to an area that's near and dear to me, and that's family. And I'm a family man. I have 4 beautiful children, 4 amazing kids. I jokingly say 4 good-looking kids that look just like their daddy, but I get in trouble when I say that because my wife may have something to say about that. You know, you're right, Sharice, you know, the good looks do come from the dads, right? Okay, don't say that.
There you go.
I won't get in trouble. It's so, you got the side eye there, man. Just wait to see what your response is. It's so, but anyway, so we're gonna dive into this information. There's some things we're gonna talk about. But this subject, it was so important to me that I wrote a book about it, you know, the Parent as Coach, Developing a Family Dream Team. I was a keynote speaker for the National PTA. It was one of the more popular keynotes because of this topic. People loved the subject and they loved the content that we shared at the conference so much we were invited back multiple times to do presentations for them. And we've been all over with this, and just so honored to be in Virginia with the DBVI and all of you, the parent committee here, and it's just an honor. So let's kind of dive into some of this, and just, we're gonna have it set up in such a way there will be time for Q&A, questions and answers and things like that. And but more importantly, time to interact and talk about some of this. As you can see in this one picture here, this is my twin. I love my twin. Looks just like his dad, a smaller version. But this is what his dad looked like 20 years ago, or maybe 25. Until I got married and started, you know, having those wonderful dinners and put a few extra on. But it's okay. It's a sign of love. But so we're going to talk about this first session. We have three workshops we're going to be doing on this topic, and he really does look like me. And I call him my little twin. But and so this is the first one, the family vision, and we're going to have others. I just would encourage you, as we put the dates up, please feel free to participate, tell people about it, because this is a really, really timely, it's a good, timely topic as of today. So I like this quote where it says, families are like branches on a tree. We grow in different directions, yet our roots remain as one. I love that quote. You see. Now, I would like to ask anyone, when you see this quote, what comes to mind for you? Because I love it. I have my thoughts in just a moment, but I just would love to hear yours. What does this mean to you when you read this?
Each of you have, each has a different personality possibly and different likes and stuff, like a branch, but we all have the same common love and roots where our same
Yeah.
family values that you.
Yep. That's good. Yep.
Yeah. What that also reminds me of is to understand our family is very, very close. But as the kids grow up, they're going to have different, or they do have different personalities. They're going to have interests, beliefs, in some cases. I mean, not the core beliefs, but there's some things that are going to be different from ours.
Mm-hmm.
To me, what this also reminds me is to respect those differences.
Yep.
There comes a time when you treat your child as an adult.
Yep.
And being able to respect that we cherish that commonality, but also at the same time,
yeah,
from the differences. Like, well, one of my favorite quotes, and I have this in my office, is the two most important things you can give your children are roots and wings.
There you go. I love that. Yep. That is fantastic. I'm going to use that one. I love that. And it's the truth. Yeah. My children are now in different phases of their life. I have 2 in college. I have one that just moved to California. He literally just moved. And I'll tell you something. He went out there on faith. He didn't have a job. He had enough money for like 2 months. I'm like, okay, fella. But, he has a degree from one of the top art schools. He wanted to be closer to where his profession was. And 2 months later, he's doing well. He got a place. He's feeling good. He's spreading his wings. He was I call a victim of COVID because he didn't even cross the stage and graduate from his college. They mailed it to him because of COVID. And he was basically kind of in the abyss for 1.5 years because nobody was hiring because of the pandemic. But, but like you said, Sharice, he's going a different direction. But guess what? His roots are right back here with us and his family. And so I think it's important that as our kids, and I love how you position it from mature in life, and they go in different directions. And they sometimes even have different ways of seeing things. And that's sometimes for a parent that can be difficult, especially in the early years, because we're so used to kind of giving them a sense of direction. But now they're like taking their own direction. They're like, okay, I know mom, I know dad, but I'm going over here. Like I'm a dad, and it's funny, in my family, I'm the one that's always like, is everybody going to be okay? I'm that person in the family. And so I was a little bit more uncomfortable with my son going to California than my wife was. My wife was like, goodbye. All right, big fella, we'll catch you next time. Come home for Thanksgiving. I said, well, if the boy don't eat, what are you going to look like coming home Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
Funny, people always think the dads are the tough ones, man. Moms sometimes don't play as well, right, moms? Come on,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's time to go. It's time to go. Let them go. So they can. You have to go away to come back again.
There you go. And my wife always just says it like this. She said, the beauty of it, when you go away, you can always come home for the holidays.
That's right.
And so yeah, but this is a beautiful quote. Tish, what do you think when you see this? Because I just think it's I don't want to spend too much time on this, but yeah.
Well, for me, my children are adults, and it's interesting that they are very different. Mm-hmm. And I wanted them to be like branches that branched out and be independent. Yeah. I probably pushed them to be independent. Mm-hmm. And, helped them get started. But, they know they can always come back home. And the funny thing is even though I kind of, push that independence, mm-hmm. I see myself in them in so many ways that, that always interests me. Now they're very different and they're very own person, but a lot of the same values, and they'll retain those no matter what they do.
because you place that in them, which is a good thing, you know, and we want to, and we, you know, there's the saying that we used to always say that we raise our children to go, not stay. And that's really the truth. We are raising them to go. And, you know, my mom used to always, it's funny, my mother used to always tell my brother, and I don't know if it's the nicest thing to say, but she used to say to us, you guys have an expiration date. She said, she used to say, you know, because of my family, just making it through high school was a big deal back when I was coming up. So like, as soon as you get to 18, like figure it out, job or college, but you're not staying here. And so we knew, you know, we knew our mom loved us and loves and still loves us, I should say. She's still around, but the reality is, you know, her upbringing, the way she raised us helped us to become the independent people that we are today. You know, but our roots started in that home, and our roots are still pretty much there. So, and for me, it means a lot because you know, I'm proud of my kids. You know, and I've always placed vision in my children. Like one thing that's big for me in my world, in my space, and it's really a part of my natural giftings, is I want my children to realize they have a voice. You know what I mean? I've always say you have a voice. And you can use your voice. Now they do have a kind of a distinct advantage because you got a dad that speaks for a living. So they travel. That's all they've been seeing for the last 20 years. So people are like, man, how could your kids get up on the stage and do it? Well, they've got 20 years of experience, you know, just seeing the dad doing this so much. But I was really proud of my daughter. She was the keynote speaker for the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals at the Youth Symposium in Chicago last December. That's the big organization for workforce development. And she keynoted on motivating youth from a youth perspective. And my daughter started a nonprofit to help orphans in Nairobi, Kenya, as you've heard before. She's doing some amazing things with her life. She's a student at American University, a global scholar. Really proud of her. My son, Daryl, as I mentioned in the bottom picture, he created this thing called the Superhero Project, where he does this work with kids because he saw his dad. So he helped work with kids to help them create their own superheroes. But here's the twist. They are the superhero. And then he tells them, let's identify your superpowers. And your superpowers, listen to this, Sharice, you really like this, are your gifts, your talents, and your abilities. Right. Boy, you should see these kids go off. And this when he does this workshop, because first of all, kids like to create superheroes. But then, wait a minute, I'm the superhero? Oh, wow. So then they get, you know, and then he said your gifts, talents, and abilities are superpowers. So I'm saying that because that's a part of our family identity. They've watched this, they've seen it, they know they have a voice, you know, they know. And so it's something I'm very proud of with my household. All my children are in the same mold, even my other son who's not in there, and my baby girl, Abigail. But besides your personal example, your family vision provides the roots you need for your family identity. Now, my family's identity is not speaking. I'm just using this as an example, but the identity is using our voice. Part of our identity is using our voices to make a difference. And that's something we've embedded in all of our children. And so proud of that. And so, so when we talk about family vision, a well-written family vision statement will answer life's great questions. And this is really important because when we think about the statement, what it is like for families is all sort of like a glue to our values. Does that make sense? A glue to our values. So the vision is like, this is who we are. And by understanding it and embracing it, what it does is it's saying, this is who we are, and this is how we operate as a family. Now, I'm gonna say this, and this is just the truth. Now, we're talking about this from a writing something, but some people don't write. I just want to be clear on that. But their values are still very solid because they communicate them so much. You know, they communicate them through words, actions, and deeds. Can any of you understand what I mean by that and relate to that? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking as you went through this of, you know, in my professional role, I almost always have gone through the vision, mission statement to get that clarity, but we haven't written it down in the family. Mm-hmm. Something you, like you said, your actions speak. You don't have to write this thing down. in some ways it would feel kind of strange for us to sit down and write it, because I associate that so much with my work environment.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's unspoken, and it comes through
Mm-hmm.
your
Yep.
behavior and your actions.
Yep. Yeah, big time. And I'll tell you this, it has merit on both sides, because there's a lot of people do write it down, but the most important aspect of writing it down is living it, because it's kind of like a company with core values. It's like, these are our 7 core values, and
Right.
yeah, like, respect the customer. And then the customer comes in and get an attitude with them, and the customer's looking at the core values on the wall, and they're looking at this person like, that's not really matching too well right here. So writing only is valuable as application. You know what I mean? It may just be a way of positioning it, but that's all it's for. If not, like we consult around core values, and we always say, if you're not living your values, don't take time to write them, because it's almost an indictment for somebody to come into your company and see it, and then you're not exhibiting it.
Right.
Basically, values can guide you in life.
Yes.
Without values, you are nothing, really.
Yep, that's it. And your values, you're right, Anna. They drive the way we do things, and they're really like almost like a strange, it almost sound weird, but like a guiding light. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, they're like a guiding light. And my hope in doing the parent as coach is that families will understand this and embrace it. Like you said, Sharice, people do it, without, it just naturally, it's the way we do things, and we kind of have it in place. But sometimes I see families who don't, you know what I mean? And you have some kids who are out here just trying to get a sense of identity because they have none.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just don't have any. And so what happens when a kid doesn't have a sense of identity? Somebody gives them one. And the next thing you know, kids doing drugs, kids getting in trouble, kids not doing well in school. Because why? Their identity is not shaped by a loving family, let's say. Their identity is shaped by something else, and so I know all of us who work with youth have seen that many times. Now, let me be clear on something, because I always, when I say this, I want to make sure I understand sometimes kids come from really good situations and still make bad mistakes, but a lot of times it's what I tell kids all the time, and I work with youth all over this country. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Yep.
Period. So you got the greatest mom and dad in the world, but then you're going to hang with the wrong people, and they're shaping your influence, and that's not a good thing. Or the greatest family. So I work with enough young people to know that sometimes I don't want to make it seem like you do this and it's all perfect. But I think what we need to do is we do this and we let that example speak volumes to our kids, to the point when they run into those situations, they avert it, they could avoid it versus then participating, and people used to always ask me, like when I was younger, I used to get, a lot of stuff from the guys in my community, because they always said, they would always say, you just listen to your mom too much. I had to be this guy that did whatever they wanted me to do, to be with the in crowd. And I said, let me tell you something, the reality is she had me, you didn't.
Coach D, I was going to mention, there's a great book. Apollo Ono wrote a book called Hard Pivot. Have you read that?
I have not.
And it is really interesting, because he talks about how he had to pivot for much of his growth. He was training to be the best in the world at something. And that took up, his time, his thought process, his energy. Yeah. And he maintained family ties and so forth, but he kind of put everything on the back burner to do that. But then when he retired from ice speed skating, he had to figure out, how do I reinvent myself? How do I find myself again?
Yeah.
And he is a really nice guy. So I met him
okay.
at the training center. And it's a really interesting book about how you pivot.
Yep.
And he talks about part of that pivot you know, surrounding yourself with people who are positive and finding ways to give back.
Yep, that's it. I love that.
Who's the author again?
Hard Pivot.
It's called Hard Pivot. It's by Apollo Ono.
Yeah. You know, I haven't heard that name in so long, but now it just kicked in who you mentioned. He was really good.
Yeah, he is
Really
one of
good.
the most decorated Olympians
He was
in
really
ice
good.
speed skating,
Yes.
in short track. He's incredible.
Yeah. That D, we really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. You know, and so a lot of times, to be honest with you, if I can take what Tish is saying and connect it to what we're talking about, you know, it's great when we can, like, again, looking at scenarios through having a vision. Like, I'm sure Apollo had a vision, so he had to do certain things a certain way, stay committed to that thing. You know, I mean, the drive and the practice, but then, like you said, the pivot. So in the case of, let's say, with our kids, they should be able to see things and then say, okay, pivot away and say, you know what, I'm going here. I have a whole new pathway. I mean, excuse me, a pathway I'm going, and that's not part of it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, and that's something I know for me, my kids, I've always tried to place in them. We talk about family vision and mission, is that, you know what, you know, your sense of a purpose is defined through this interaction here, which being birthed in this home, having mom and dad that support you, having family that care about you. You don't have to go out there and find a sense of identity. You just don't, you know, because you know, you just really don't have to. Now, I want my kids to have good friends, don't get me wrong, but I want them to understand the roots of who they are is not out there with these kids. That's fun stuff with children, but when it comes to family, we are who we are. I'll say this real quick, not to sound like we're perfect family, but when my baby was a little baby, she was 2 years old, she always wanted to do something to kind of show her brothers and sisters, about 3, that she was a big girl. You know? and so she said, she had us put our hands together as a family. So we put hands on top of each other. And then she would say 1, 2, 3. And she would say it like a 3-year-old would say 1, 2, 3. And then she would say, throw our hands up in the air and say, Andrews, that's our last name. And so we would go places, out of the blue, she would have us put our hands together. I'm like, we're at the grocery store, Abby. She don't care. 1, 2, 3, Andrews. And I just thought that was so cute, that was her way of contributing to the family identity, you know, that, you know, we're not ashamed of who we are, no matter where we go. She probably wasn't looking at it at that age, but that's part of what it is. So the purpose, when you talk about having a family vision statement, creates a bond between parents and children as they support each other and help each other grow. And notice this is important, support each other. So it's not just the parents supporting the kids, it's the kids supporting the parents. You know, it's not just one-sided. You know, my kids have made me a better man. You know what I mean? They've made me a better husband. You know, my wife has made me a better man, a better husband. So I'm saying that we, you know, and I have done the same with them. So my children have helped me to grow. And so like, matter of fact, if I have a moment where I'm a little off vision, they'll bring me back in, like, Dad, come on, Dad, you know. And so, but they have that anchor that we've established in our home, you know, that helps them. So your family's sense of unity and purpose strengthens when each member knows that everyone is truly committed to each other's success and growth. One thing I've always told my children, and it's a big part of family vision, don't ever envy each other, ever. Be proud of each other. Just be proud. You know, like one of the challenges we have faced in our family, my daughter is a super overachiever. You know, here's a girl that's been on the Kelly Clarkson show. She just recently was in Delaware Today, our big magazine. She has this nonprofit to help orphans. She's a Shoko Young Change Maker. She's a global scholar at American. And there used to be a little bit of a challenge, but it's not now. Her brothers are very proud of her and very supportive. Because I said, one of the enemies to family is envy. Envy can destroy a family. And envy can also create a lifetime of animosity that does not end when you leave the house. It carries on. You know, do y'all agree with, you understand what I mean by that? Does that make sense?
I agree.
Yep. And so we don't want that in our homes with our families. And so, so when you talk about family vision, components. There's three areas we're going to look at. This the identity, family communications, and a written document. Again, like, and I agree, Sharice, that's why I said it myself. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but if it's something in which we agree upon and we model, that's the key part. We're modeling it. It doesn't have to be sitting up on top of a refrigerator, you know. And yep.
You know, at the same time, I'm always curious. I like to know what's worked for other people, because I'm never going to be too old to learn.
Yeah, and same here. Yeah,
Something advantageous and having it written down.
Yeah.
And I would try that. It's just something that I haven't done.
yeah, and I was, you know, and I'm for both. Like I've seen it work both ways. That's why I'm mentioning that. You know, we had one on the refrigerator forever. Then we finally started living it so much we pulled it. We just wasn't on the refrigerator anymore, you know, because it just was who we were. And so now, you know, if I would ask kids what's the family vision, they probably wouldn't remember. But I've seen in their lives that they live it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Teresa, I have a question for you and Nima. When we were talking about envy, I know that you have more than one child.
Yep.
Was there ever any feeling of, oh, this child is vision impaired, so he gets more attention or more help? Or from the vision impaired child, well, you know, my siblings don't have this impairment. I mean, was there ever any kind of struggle in that light? I mean,
That's a good question.
you know, I'm interested in
what
because we have, in fact, I have one family, Coach D, where there are twins.
Right.
And one is vision impaired and one is not.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was always interested in that, if that was a dynamic that you ever faced.
Not in that sense. Well, one of the things in our family, yes, our youngest has a vision impairment, but he's also much younger than our other children. There's an age gap of about 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
Child. So it's more like they see themselves, and I got to pull them back sometimes, that you're not the parent.
Yeah.
They'll come in and want to do more kinds of things. So there hasn't been that envy, but there's that temptation to come in and do the parenting is a good thing, but it's also, you know, something you've got to be careful.
I got you.
For me,
The child doesn't feel, hey, everyone's trying to parent me, and then we want all of our children to be able to express themselves. And otherwise,
for me,
introverted anyway. I'm sorry, Ina, you're saying something?
yeah, for me, I believe you have to teach them at a young age to share, to help each other, because when they grow up and they don't get taught, guess what? They're gonna do that.
Yep.
So
yeah,
that's what I believe. You have to teach them at a young age so they grow up knowing you have to support each other, not to go against each other.
Yeah. And you know, Ina, that's part of the family identity. When we talk about family identity, those are the things that we are looking at establishing so that these things become sort of the norm for us, you know, sharing with one another.
Ina, I think you're absolutely right. You've got to start off early so they can do that. You also have to look at the personality of each child.
Yes.
Some children that are much more extroverted,
Mm-hmm.
attention. You've got some children who are more introverted, and
and selfish too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, all of us have an element of selfishness, but what we've got to understand, you know, all the kids, just because someone is more outgoing doesn't mean they're getting more attention.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there can be some that's where I relate to what you said, that start early and explain to them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whether you're introverted, extroverted, you enjoy more attention, you enjoy less attention.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to that does not create a conflict.
Yep. I'll
You're,
tell you,
you're all loved equally.
yeah, and you know
Yeah.
what? I'm so glad now. I know that as a father. Like I know my wife knows as a wife, but I'll be honest with both all of you here. I didn't grow up in that world. You know, my brother and I sadly just aren't that close. You know, and we're older. I mean, and the reason why is because when you know, as you can see now, I'm vocal. You know, and my mom and I used to have a lot of conversations, and my brother was always kind of in the backdrop. You know. And so I was young, I didn't know anything. I just kind of went with the flow. But now, in retrospect, knowing what I know now, I'll probably go back and say, Mom, I know Mason, my brother's Mason, he's quiet, but let's try to include him in these conversations a little bit more. So now, guess what? We don't hardly communicate that much. And I've tried, you know, I've made attempts, you know, but I'm not hoping for things change for him, but he's still kind of trapped in that season of life. And so I guess, and maybe since he didn't communicate a lot, he just, as an adult, just kept doing it, you know? So it just goes to show you sometimes the long-term effect of these things. And we all, if we haven't experienced it personally, I'm sure you know of people who grew up in the same home and they have no communications with each other. They just, or don't.
I know many.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. Because that's where the foundation is being laid. Yeah, and it's sad, you know, you think about it. And I was at a point one time, I was sort of envious of people that were close with their siblings. I was like, man, I'm jealous of you. I wish I had.
One of the things we did with our children is if they fought with each other, instead of telling them, okay, you're in timeout here and you're in timeout there, we tell them to hold each other's hands and
Oh yeah, yeah. Like,
you know, and the other thing that supplemented that is we've got, you talk about a vision, a mission, and then the ways to execute that. One thing we try really hard to do with our kids, with each other, you're going to have differences of opinion, but don't let the sun go down on your anger.
there it is. Yep.
Then those walls start building up.
Yep. Yeah, and see, that's we parents have a tremendous responsibility. My daughter paid me a pretty nice compliment the other day. Her mom and I, my wife and my daughter went to dinner, and my wife had this little game where she, you know, just asks questions of your child, you know, at the dinner, so we could have to. And so she just asked her to tell us how about our parenting styles, you know. And so what did she think? And I think that's healthy sometimes to ask your kids that question. But my daughter, she looked at me. At first, I thought she was going to say something like I did something. She said, Dad, I just have to say, and then she just really brought a smile on my face. She said, you're a dad, and I know we have to do things, you're dad, and you have us do things. She said, but you do it in such a way that you show us love.
Yeah, that's important.
She said, you show us love. Like, there's no question that I know you love me, even though you're asking me to do certain things, like clean the kitchen or do your room. And she said, you never get really upset. Like when situations happen, you don't get upset. You deal with them, but you do it in a way that I feel like you care about me. I said, okay, that's enough. I'm gonna start crying here at dinner, you know. But it makes you realize that, you know, because this stuff I teach, I try to practice. I'm not perfect, but I try to practice it. And from an 11-year-old, that's a pretty big compliment. You know what I mean? It's a really big compliment. It made me feel good as a dad. So let's go on for some more of this content. Thank you. This has been really good conversation. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So family identity is just, who are we as a family? Do we define ourselves by weaknesses or our strength or our strengths? What paths do we have our kids on? What are our activities? Are we teaching our kids to serve others? I think that's such a big thing. Sometimes even through volunteerism, just have kids go out and just volunteer to do stuff. Like I like what my daughter did with the nonprofit in Kenya, because that's service, you know. And there's a thing we would have them doing, going to the pre-K classes and have them read books to the kids, you know, just like, and I tell you something, like I've done a lot of work with teenagers, and not to put teenagers in the box, because I love them all, but if there's any selfishness in the teenagers, 9 times out of 10, that's a kid that's not serving. That's a kid that is that's really all kind of into themselves. And they haven't taken the time to realize my life is more than just about me, So as a parent, we can help shape some of that by saying, you know what, take a little time to show that you care. Like I have a friend that he and his kids do a lot of the Habitat for Humanity. They build the homes, and that's been great for he has 2 boys, and that's been phenomenal for them, but it's just another way of serving. So identity is really important, a lot of when it comes to, so, and so because of the nature of this workshop, you don't have to do this, but, sometimes you want to write down, what are some of the things that are part of our identity? We care about other people, we serve the community, we show love and respect to each other, we have honest communications. I mean, just different things you can write down, because I do think that's a good thing to write down. So you can just look at it and analyze it. Like for me, just time with my wife is something. I want my kids to see and I'll tell you something, I'll really come clean. It's not that we've had a perfect marriage. We haven't been perfect in marriage. We've been married 28 years and we've had a lot of ups and a lot of downs. But we've had more ups than downs, and we value it. So you see this one picture over here. My daughter, wearing the outfit there, standing at the stairs. My daughter, when she was 7 years old, not my youngest, but my oldest, started a Valentine's Day tradition in our home, where she cooked for us. She said, I don't want you going to restaurants anymore.
That's nice.
Yeah, she started a little event. And actually, if I can send you a video, I want you to see the event was such that we had to go outside the door and act like we were walking in a restaurant. And they had candles, and she had her brothers, they were the sous chefs. She put her brothers to work. and we had to come in, and my youngest son, Alex, he was standing there with the menus, and he would take us to our seats. And they would have it we kept all of them to a handwritten, chicken was spelled the wrong way. And all of that. And like, what would you like today? Ooh, we'll take some of that chicken because there's only one thing on the menu, We'll take some beans. And I mean, our friends on Facebook love it because they like, wow, your kids did this. So my daughter started it, okay? And she's now 20, all right? And so when she went off to college, this little one you see sitting here in the seat took over. And all the kids are out now. So now she's the only one. So she did it this Valentine's by herself. I was so moved, and this was the event right there, And so that I just said, man, this kind of like one of those moments you feel like I did something right in life, that my kids would take the time to do something like that. And this picture here is a group that I created called Dads United. We're not all in there, but this is just a few that was at a wedding. But we get together once a month with our kids, and all of our kids, and the wives couldn't believe it when we first got started, but we got to get together once a month, and we talk about different values and things like that. And then each of the dads, based upon their giftings, would talk about like finances and life skills and things like that. And we started that 12 years ago. So that's 12 years of doing this. So I'm saying all this to say, like in this picture here, my daughter's like reading a book. These are all things like for me, fatherhood means a lot. So I created Dads United because I want to grow with dads. And I want my kids to know other dads who cared. You know what I mean? So again, like not everybody's in this picture, but it's, we got all kinds of folks in there. It's a diverse group. It's black, white. We had a Latino guy that was in there. He's not there now, but and we just care about raising our kids. So I'm just saying that's all. Think about what's our identity? Who are we as a family? It's so important to just think about that. Now, with that being said, keep identity in front of mind. It's kind of who we are. Intentionally do things to make them part of your norm. So, like I said, for my kids, they saw that relationship piece was important. They said, well, let's do something. Your mom and dad always go to these restaurants. You don't have to now. We're going to just do this at home every year. And then celebrate successes. That's just important to do that. So that's the identity part. The communications part is interesting because communications drive a lot of family vision, like what kids kind of embrace in life, sometimes start with our words. And that can be challenging to know that, but it's the truth, you know. Our children's lives today, and often their paradigm in the future is driven by the communications we model today. You know, part of our family mission should be to uplift more than point out shortcomings, and also to apologize when we don't, you know, exhibit certain things. Like today, I had to apologize to my daughter because when we had the accident, she was in the car, but it wasn't that bad. Nothing happened with her. But my initial response was not too positive. You know what I mean? And I thought, you know, and then I finally pulled it together. And I said, you know, what did I just model from her? Something happens, this is the response. And so I look back and I say, hey, you know, honey, I just want to let you know, Dad had a moment with this. I'm sorry, you know, but we're dealing with it now. And she said, that's okay, Dad, you know. And so I'll be honest with you, sometimes kids don't ever hear an apology, you know, when we do things wrong. So this is the tough part of the family as coach, but it's the part we have to work through because our communications impacts our children. It's just the way it is. And it's just the reality of it, you know? And so that's pretty cool the way they did that. But there's this old saying, they say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words would never hurt me. I changed it because that was back in the past.
Yeah.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words lift me up or tear me down for years.
Absolutely.
You hear people that talk about the trauma of things years later, you know? So we can't say that words will never hurt me. They do. They hurt more than sticks and stones. They do. Would you agree, Sharice? I mean, seriously, man.
Yeah. You know, the previous slide, you talked about it's more important to uplift.
Yes.
About defects.
Mm-hmm.
Doing is you're creating that template in their minds, the self-image template. And if you keep pointing the shortcomings, you may do it because you don't want them to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Gets reinforced as the shortcoming.
Big time.
Because you've done something positive, people build from that.
Build from it. There you go. That's it.
I love that. And even when you talk about identity, an important aspect of that is this is where where you learn that it's okay to be yourself and you can
Absolutely.
Be people.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be like everyone else. If you're comfortable with yourself, then it becomes much easier not to stray down the other path. Okay, your friends may be doing drugs. They may be doing something.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You're comfortable with who you are.
I believe words can destroy someone.
Yes.
It's worse than even physical.
It is.
Yes.
Because it can destroy your mind. And it sticks into your mind and until you're out of this earth.
Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, Ina? The number one area of therapies is words that were spoken to people years ago.
Yep,
Yes.
I believe so.
Number one. Because they can't get it out of their head.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
self-image.
yeah, it's just really, there's a friend of mine that talked about, we've heard of PTSD, you know, post-traumatic stress. They said that a lot of times people have had it through words that people shared with them when they were younger. And what happens is they get stuck in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then years later, they're still stuck in that moment. And I know people personally that have experienced that big time. They just can't shake the way things work. And so they go get help, you know, they get therapy. And sometimes we always think of that as like people who have serious issues. And sometimes it's not serious, like they're all serious, but sometimes it could be just the way that they communicate a certain way because that's how they were communicated to.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't understand, why do I talk to people like this? They don't even think about it sometimes because that's the way they work. So that's why it's so important to be having these honest communications and conversations because as parents, we're shaping what kind of adults they're going to become. You know what I mean? Where they're going in the future. And if we have to think about that. Like I try not to, like what my daughter said, when they do something, I try not to holler and scream. I try not to. And I'm not saying I've been perfect, but I try not to, because those words can stick.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they can even destroy your kids and grandchildren if they're,
Yeah.
yes.
it's the worst thing that can happen to anyone.
Yeah. And so, thank you, Anna. So as a family, you know, we talk about family vision and mission. I know you may say this is a little different, Coach. You teach like a vision statement, but I said, you know, vision statement means nothing. All these other things don't happen. So we got to see the vision is not just a piece of paper or a document. It's the things that we do. We're forecasting into the future and thinking, what do we want our children to be like?
Right.
When they
Maybe upset about something at
Yeah.
that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You just step back and think,
Okay. 10 days from now, 10 years from now,
Yep.
will this really matter?
Will it really even matter?
Why, you know, why get upset about it and say things in anger that leave scars you don't even see?
Scars, lots of scars. Yeah. And so again, I love teaching this topic of the parent as coach, because we realize, just like an athletic coach is trying to win in the game of sports, we're trying to win in the game of life. You know what I mean? And that's really what the whole premise of this is all about, that we're the coaches. We're the coaches of our team. Like when a team wins or loses, it's coaches, you know? And I just want to say real quick, when you said, Sharice, accepting them for who they are, like I have a friend, we just celebrated his 50th birthday party, and his kids were there. They're like my nieces and nephews, and one of his sons is a model. All right. So he decided not to go one route. He's going the new route now, and he wants to be a model. He's really good at it. He was actually on a billboard in the New York, what's that place? Wall Street. What's the street? The Times Square, right? And he was there, and I admit he looks a little different. He's kind of changed his look. His style is a little different. I'm like, okay, that's who he is. But when he got up and spoke about his dad, he said something that was so powerful. He said, my dad taught me because this was his dad, we were celebrating. In our home, we love you for who you are. So he's coming on, he got a few earrings here and an earring there and, you know, a few things, but his dad is not saying, okay, where's up with all that piercing? You know, and he loves him. That's his son. Yeah. And he's not up there making bad decisions. He's just a model, and he's kind of going that modeling route, and he just looks a little different. But the point being, I thought that was so powerful that he would say that about his dad, you know. Yes.
One of the things I want to say is that generations are different in how they communicate. I mean,
Yep.
our parents, the way they communicated with us is
Yep.
different than what we're doing with our kids. And sometimes you take lessons from what happened to you that you didn't like and make sure you don't do that with your
Absolutely.
children. And the thing about it is that, you know, 30, 40 years ago, or like parents say something and you listen and you don't talk back.
Yep.
That's what, you know, what was, things have changed, and, you know, you do need to parent, but you're not a authoritative first parent, you know, nowadays, and at the same time, you don't want to be, you know, when your child is so young, it's not time to be friends with them at that age.
No.
And then you be friends with them. They need the guidelines. They need the frame or structure around what's okay to do, what's not okay to do, and to be able to communicate and talk. One of the things that we did with our kids is to tell them when they went off somewhere, you can talk to us about anything. Their society tries to, with the movies and television and stuff, try to tell people, you know, you see kids drinking, you see kids doing drugs, you see kids having parties, and so many messages are coming across with these movies and stuff, other things with them, with their friends. So we tell our kids, you can talk to us about anything in your life, and anything doesn't say a particular thing to them. They want, it's like, you can talk to us about sex, you can talk to us about drugs, you can talk to us if you had a fight with somebody. So you have to name those things, because the kids are, while they're young, they're like, well, my parents didn't say I could talk to them about this, whatever they're going through. So you need to name those things. And that's one thing we found, that our kids were pretty open with us about different things that went on in their lives and things like that, because they knew that it was okay to come home and talk to us about it.
I love it. I love it.
They can get it in perspective as opposed to some distorted view, whether it's how you treat the other sex.
Yep. And that starts with what you just said, Nima, and that's about the way you open that door. Some
Yep.
parents, like you said, some parents shut the door. Some parents like, it's my way or the highway. And guess what? The kids take the highway. They'll take the highway.
That's the way it was with my parents. Is
Yeah.
more, you know, whatever you're doing, we don't want to hear about it. And
Yep.
so I struggled on trying to figure out what is the right thing, what is not the right thing. And I didn't want to make sure my kids didn't have that issue with us. So
You gave them a gift, no doubt about it. I just want to say thank you for that too. That's great. Thank you for that input. I just want to go back and talk about that identity too. And again, talking about blind and visually impaired kids. And I see you all do it very well. And that is just, let them know this disability does not limit who you are. It's like that's your identity is still shaped in your potential and our belief in who you are, And so you and I know, and many people know, there have been many people who've been blind and visually impaired, that their families raised them, and I've seen it with you all, raised them in such a way, they didn't see the limit of their potential. I mean, they didn't see a limit on their potential. And so I just think that's powerful, you know what I mean? That our family, and then even with our kids, each family member enforcing that, reinforcing that, never saying anything, even in a jestful way, that's going to be detrimental to that family member's, well-being and progress. So I just wanted to go back and mention that the identity piece is so important for kids who are, may have the disability, because growing up, that takes the cap off of potential then. Because people, and you hear stories. I mean, I hear story after story after story of people that has been the case for. And that's why I love working with you all, because I know that's part of how you operate as well. All right. So our words have power, more power than our actions. Sometimes people think it's just our actions. No, sometimes it's our words. Our words can stick. People may forget action, but they'll never forget words. Yeah. And we need to help our kids maneuver through their shortcomings, be a positive affirmations more than negative dispositions. So we got to help them there. And we need to realize our own communication with each other is being observed. My daughter reminds me of that all the time. You know what I mean? She's watching mom and dad, and how we communicate with each other, and that's a big part of how our children start to develop the way that they do things. So we want to be positive versus negative. I don't want to go through all of these. You're going to get this recording, and you'll get the slides too, and we'll post those up, I guess, Sharice, and so everybody have access to them. But we want to, like, the bottom part is important, because that's from our mentor, Zig Ziglar. Be a good finder instead of a bad finder. He said, we can easily become bad finders, and next thing you know, that's what kids start to look at us as saying, hey, my home, it was always what I did wrong.
Yeah.
And that, boy, that's a door opener to go out. And one thing a young man told me a long time ago to help me, and I've done this with my own kids, explaining why things to me they're done first, simply telling. And I'll say this real quick, because I want to make sure we could get you out here at a decent time. One of my friends is a guy named Josh Davies, and he has the Center for Work Ethic, and he does we do a lot of keynotes at same conferences. And this is kind of a funny thing. And so he was doing this research, talking about this research on chores, on how powerful chores are. And I had my 12-year-old son at the time, Alexander, with me at this conference. And he broke down how chores, based upon the research, are really an indicator of life success later, and he broke down why. My son, Alexander, looks at me in the middle of the keynote. He said, Dad, that's exactly what you tell us. And I said, yeah, now I got the research to back it up. He said, wow, have you said that before? I said, yeah. I said, do you think I just made it up? I said, no. So it's just, it goes back to explaining. This is why we give you chores. It's not just because we want to clean house. It's because you're going to have a house one day and you're going to need to clean it. You're going to have a life one day where you're going to have to put energy into stuff. So it's just good to explain things. And so let me just, for time's sake, because there's the real strength in parenting is listening, and that's important. I love this picture of my daughter and I used to take her to daddy-daughter dances all the time. And so that was always cool. But it's listening. And so for me, that's a gift my grandmother gave me. Listening is important. And so, yeah. And so think about what you can agree to as family, as far as family communications, because that's a big part of the vision and mission process. And so write the vision. I like this, write the vision and make it plain, which is a scripture, but it's a powerful statement. You know what I mean? Write the vision, make it plain and make it simple to understand. And it should be done as a family, should include multiple elements, should be something that makes the kid sense to the kids and family. It typically works best when the kids live in the house. So what I mean by that is family mission is like when we're home, but when they go out, it's in them now. You know what I mean? It's just in them. Okay. And so I just want to get us out of here. So I'm gonna kind of go through these. And so good statements are good vision statements have common components written in the present, not future tense, like what we're doing now. And matter of fact, I should pull that out because there should be some future tense in there as well. It's summarized with a powerful phrase. It describes an outcome, the best outcome we can achieve. You use unequivocal language. It evokes emotion, which means they feel it. It helps build a picture, the same picture in people's minds. So we're all operating in the same lane. My wife's family, they all have degrees. Matter of fact, a master's degree is a bachelor's to them. I mean, you got to get, a PhD, you've arrived, but they put that in their children years. That's just been the way so their identity is in college. They have a big identity in college degrees. So my wife's family's masters and PhDs. I'm talking about cousins and everything across the board, because that's just who they are, Now my family is just the opposite. My family, I'm the first one to graduate from college. So it's I lived in a different world. So you should set up a time, discuss why you like to create a family mission statement, ask each other to note a one value or trait. Again, this is if you're doing an actual exercise where you're working through it. These are just some ways of doing it. Write down recurring themes and values. Okay. And then these are just a few ones I just thought were pretty cool that people put together. Some put it in bullet point. I like that. It's like a family motto more than a family vision. And so these are things you can always sit down and measure and talk about, with your family and your kids. And, it doesn't have to be complicated. Be a family that loves each other and loves our neighbor as we reach out to our world. We commit to be for each other and work as a team. We resolve to be careful, helpful, encouraging, loving, loyal, to have a servant's heart, to enjoy each other and to never give up. My daughter, my youngest one, again, she started this thing, Andrews never give up. Like I said, she always contributing. And her thing is, Andrews never give up. I said, okay, baby. And so that's how it's, but it's, but see, you can see we're not talking about complicated things here. Just simple statements. Any feedback on this? Any thoughts on this as you see it? Anybody have any thoughts?
I'm looking through it. I like this. And we'll probably go back and try this ourselves.
Yeah,
doing the written things. I think you've done well in showing an example. One quick few slides back when you talked about listening.
Yeah.
Share something that I read a couple of days ago, and I read I can't remember where, but in that a lot of times when we listen, instead of listening to understand, we're listening to formulate our response.
Yep, big time.
Right? And that's so important, especially with it could be with our kids, it could be with anyone.
Yep.
Listening is an active thing of the goal is understanding.
Yeah.
Not just to need a quick retort or a response to what's being done, because then you're not really understanding.
Yep.
You defeat the whole purpose of listening.
You can repeat what you say. If I understand this correctly, this is what I think you were trying to say. So repeat that. So you tell them that you understood. It's one way of showing that you listened.
Yep. It's called reflective listening, what you're talking about, Nima.
Correct.
Yes, reflective.
And you find, especially in the corporate world, this happens a lot.
Yep.
Wherever you try to do a one-upmanship or get your point across, you're not really listening.
You're not. And it causes so much stress and chaos in some of these companies. Yep. Besides this work, I know a lot about that because we actually do some work in corporate culture, building corporate cultures. And I'll tell you something, you talk about a heavy lift, that's a heavy lift. Because for a lot of companies, they've become so ingrained, that paradigm is so ingrained that it makes it very difficult. I remember one time I was flew into Dallas, Texas to work with this company out of California. They'd gone from 0 to $5 billion in like 4 years. They grew quickly, but boy, their infrastructure was terrible. The arguments, the debates, the 1 month, one upmanship, all that stuff was live in the well.
Yeah.
It was live and well. But by the time I got done with them, that changed because we dealt with the senior leaders and we said, listen, companies need to grow. Companies need to grow in revenues, but also in culture. It should be simultaneous. I said, because if you just grow in this and the culture is doing like this, then eventually you're going to end up having some serious retention issues because people don't hang around that stuff too much. They get tired of it. So yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you big time. I think Tish either fell off, I had to drop off, but but she said she was having some issues with the Wi-Fi, so that makes sense. So you want to think about some values you might want to highlight, and that could be a part of a conversation that you have. So sit down with your family and discuss identity, have open and honest communications with your kids, and have a meeting to touch your values. And that's just some, the reality of this is, and I love teaching this, but it's not the most difficult thing to do. It's just making it a priority. I think the stuff we talked about a little earlier was probably a more important aspect, that sense of identity, that sense of communications, because realistically, like I said, you can have that written document, but if you don't have it, just live it. Let them feel it, let them sense it. You know what I mean? As Nima had mentioned, sometimes we got to look at the way we were raised and say, okay, that's not working today. We need to be a little bit more open, a little bit more engaged. It's the truth. It really is. It really is. I was raised like that too. Matter of fact, they used to have this saying, the kids should be seen and not heard.
Right.
And so we don't raise our kids like this. Our kids are very much heard in our home. So different. So that's all I have. Any questions? You got my email. My hope is that this video could be used for future conversations. I will send over the PowerPoint and this recording. We can post it up. And again, maybe in future events that if I'm involved or not, that's something that could be used as a teaching tool to talk about a very important subject for parents of VIPs. So that's all I have today. Thank you all so much for your time.
Great,
You're all wonderful as always, and enjoy your time away.
Yeah.
And, stay away from the falls because the falls always look dangerous to me.
We're gonna go see it. That's what we came here to see.
Oh, I went to Niagara Falls once, and I'll tell you right now, it was like, ooh, I was shaking in my boots.
They call it the Niagara Falls, and as a matter of fact, right outside our window, there's like a Cumberland River that's going around. It looks,
Wow.
It's
Yeah, well, I'll keep it in mind. I like to think about, seeing different things. So listen, enjoy your time away. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Sure. Bye-bye.